Joshua 3:1. Then Joshua rose early in the morning, and they set out from Shittim, and they came to the Jordan River, he and all the people of Israel, and lodged there before they passed over. At the end of 3 days, the officers went through the camp and commanded the people, as soon as you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God being carried by the Levitical priests, then you shall set out from your place and follow it. Yet there shall be a distance between you and it, about 2,000 cubits in length. That's about 3/4 of a mile. Do not come near it, in order that you may know the way you shall go, for you have not passed this way before. And Joshua said to the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. Underline verse 5. Consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. And Joshua said to the priests, take up the ark of the covenant and pass on before the people. So they took up the ark of the covenant and went before the people. And the Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that as I was with Moses, so shall I be with you. And as for you, command the priests who bear the ark of the covenant, when you come to the brink of the waters of the Jordan, you shall stand still in the Jordan. And Joshua said to the people of Israel, come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. And Joshua said, here is how you shall know that the living God is among you, and that he will without fail drive out from before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, and the Jebusites. Sounds like stuff you get rid of in your kitchen. Behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is passing over before you into the Jordan. Now therefore, take 12 men from the tribes of Israel, from each tribe a man. And when the soles of the feet of the priests bearing the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of the waters of the Jordan shall be cut off from flowing, and the waters coming down from above shall stand up in a heap. So when the people set out from their tents to pass over the Jordan with the priests bearing the ark of the covenant before the people, and as soon as those bearing the ark had come as far as the Jordan, and the feet of the priests bearing the ark were dipped in the brink of the water, now the Jordan overflows all its banks throughout the time of harvest, the waters coming down from above stood and rose up in a very great heap at Edom, the city that is beside Zarethan, and those flowing down toward the sea of the Arabah, the Salt Sea, also known as our Dead Sea today, were completely cut off, and the people passed over opposite Jericho. Now the priests bearing the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firmly on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan, and all Israel passed over on dry ground until all the nation finished passing over the Jordan. Wow! You turn the lights up just a little bit. It's amazing that up till this point, they have been known as the people of Israel. So everybody, watch. Ready? I'm going to help your biblical history. So Israel is a guy. So it's Abraham. Listen, watch. Abraham, Isaac, his son, and Jacob. So Jacob is the grandson of Abraham. This guy, his name was changed from Jacob to Yisrael, which means struggles and competes with God. And so Jacob's name, he has two names, Jacob and Israel. He has 12 sons, the sons of Israel. They'd become the 12 tribes of Israel, this guy. All their children, after hundreds of years, would become the people of Israel, a guy, Israel. Now watch, they have been called the people of Israel up till this point. When they cross the Jordan, they are now known as the nation of Israel. You can't have a nation without borders. So borders are a big deal in our cultural context right now. We're talking about immigration and all kinds of things like that. But understand this, regardless of where you land on that, understand that a people, to become a nation, have to have borders. They have to have somewhere that says, this is where we stop, and Canada starts, or Mexico starts, or Cuba starts, or whatever. Here's the water. Waters are our border because we're an island nation, or whatever. At some point, you have to be able to say, this is where we start, and this is where we stop. So you do it in your own house, right? You have a backyard. chances are you don't have an open backyard where everybody can just traipse on through whenever they feel like it. You know, your wife's playing with the kids in the backyard and everybody goes, oh, I'd love to play with your kids. Who are you? Oh, I just thought I'd come by. Because you don't have a fence, I thought I'd just swing by. Is this not my property too? No, it's not your property, man. Get off my property. Well, how would I know it's your property? Well, I have that fence and a large pit bull to keep you out. And here he comes, actually, after you right now. So the point is that whether it's your own property, I have a fence, I have a dog, I have whatever you've got, even if you have a ranch, something says this is where this ends and where this begins. And that's exactly what we see with Israel. Listen, they've been wandering around for 40 years in literally no man's land in the desert. You know why they're wandering around? Because the adults failed to have faith. And God said, I'm going to let all you faithless adults die in the desert. I'm going to wait for your kids to grow up, then I'm going to take them into the land because they have faith. So they're literally wandering around the desert for 40 years just waiting for the old generation to die. Now, at this point right now, for the first time in history, Israel is known as the nation of Israel. Because why? They now have borders. They have borders of Canaan. Number one, God goes before his people. God goes before his people. On the eve of crossing into Canaan, Joshua told Israel to consecrate themselves. Everybody get ready. Special movements of God can require special preparation from God's people. I'm going to lay something on you right now that you maybe never thought about. Many of you are thinking in your mind, you know what, my life's really stagnant with God, or I was stoked on God when I was in high school or college, and kind of I got to be older, and I don't know. I don't even know if I'm into it. I'm just kind of here because my wife keeps nagging me or whatever, and I guess it's good for the kids. For me, I'll suffer through it. Understand, one of the main reasons you and I stagnate in our walk with God isn't that God doesn't want to do something great in our life. It's because that we don't want to let go of control. Many of us are control freaks. We're like, I don't want to go unless I know I can control what's going to happen. I control relationships. I control my finances. I control my job. I control my kids. I control everything in life. I control when the dog barks. I got a shock collar. I control everything. I control all of my own world. And here's a problem with that. You know what the problem with that is? Is that God asks us to walk in faith, and faith by definition says you don't have control. Faith by definition says you have to trust. Well, if you just trust yourself, then you're just going to stagnate. And you do nothing. Why? Because God calls you to follow him, and you go, it's too scary, I'm just going to stay here. And we wonder, gosh, where's the joy of the Lord in my life? Like, where do I see God moving in my life? Like, really nowhere. Give yourself a heart check, because it's not that God's going, I'm done with you, I guess we're done here. It's that God maybe for years is going, let's go, you ready to go? And for many of us, we go, I'm good if I can control where I'm going. Right there, by definition, you've said, you're more in control than God is of your own life. So immediately you have to stagnate. You have to end seeing God work in your life because you have to have control. So watch. There are times in your life where God is going to say to you, I want to do a great work in your life. I expect you to consecrate yourself. Israel here was told, consecrate yourself. And you go, what does consecration mean? Consecration means basically to set yourself aside. It runs very similar to the concept of holiness. Holiness means other than. It's when you're holy, it means you're other than other things. When we say God is holy, 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 is the Lord God Almighty, what we're saying is God's other than us. He's so other than us, we don't even know how to explain God. We just say he's holy. So when you talk about holy people, it means that they are not like everybody else. They don't act like everybody else. They're different. Consecration is very similar to holiness. And what God was asking Israel to do was consecrate themselves. And here's how that works out. Right before usually an awesome work of God, God says to his people, discipline yourself in an area that you don't have to discipline yourself in normally. So for Israel, it would look like this. God is pro-sex between married adults. God is pro-sexuality. He built you. You are free 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. To have sex all day long. That's from your pastor. In other words, God is pro-sex. He built you for that. In context, in marital bounds, it's game on. If God had a thumb, he'd go thumbs up to you, okay? So here, but watch, in consecration, here's what God says. To get your mind right, to get your heart right, you self-discipline to say, I'm not going to allow my sexual desires to muddy my mind in moving forward with God. So for a certain amount of time, I restrain myself. My wife restrains herself. We seek prayer when we could be having a normal sexual relationship, but we say no for a week or 2 weeks or whatever. We're going to give ourselves to prayer rather than allowing ourselves what's normal and good. But consecration says we're going to set that aside so I don't get off track. Same thing with food. It's called fasting. Jesus fasted. We don't do it much in our culture, but it's the idea that you don't allow food to become your God. Many of us, food rules our life. I mean, Temecula is full of food. Holy cow. I've never been in a place where people spend 50 grand remodeling their kitchen and then don't use it because they go out to eat every night. This place is bizarre. When I first moved here, I'm like, dude, there's literally a restaurant for every person and dog in all of Temecula and Murrieta. So the idea is that how do you use food? Many of us use food when we get depressed. Gosh, I'm depressed. I know I can control the food I'm eating, so it's my control mechanism. I feel bad about myself, I'm going to eat. It has nothing to do with your weight, whether you're overweight or underweight or whatever. What it has to do with is where do you go when you're depressed? Where do you go to get control? Things are out of control, I'm going to sit down with a bucket of ice cream. Things are out of control, I'm going to go out and eat. Because I have to do something to placate the discontent in my life. So fasting is a way of saying, I discipline myself. Is food good? Yep. Does God allow us to eat good food? Did God give us a tongue to taste amazing steak and a nice ale? Of course he did. That's why he gave you a tongue. But consecration says, man, I think I'm a slave to food. It has nothing to do with weight. It has to do with that's my default. It's an addiction. It's where I go when I'm unhappy. Could be anything. Could be pharmaceutical drugs. Could be whatever. Could be relationships. You're like a single person, you're like, yeah, I keep having sex with people that I'm just lonely. And we fill that void with other stuff. Consecration says some of these things are okay and good. God's pro food, God's pro sex, God's pro these things in their proper context. But consecration says I put those things aside so that I can focus on God. It's what an army does when they go to war. They don't allow their guys to go to R&R right before they're going to go to battle. That's after you go to war. That's after you've done your job, then you can go mess around. Go into San Diego and have a hamburger or whatever. But when we go to war, man, everybody's rowing the same way. I showed that picture, that video a couple weeks ago. Man, when everybody's rowing the same way, man, the synergy of human energy is almost unstoppable. Man, when everybody's just rowing the way they want to, and like they got their minds are divided, then you just spin around in a circle. Happens in families, happens in companies, happens in nations. So God says, let's not all go sideways. Let's get our heads right and our minds right and our hearts right. You know how you do that? You set aside the things that you always want to do, but for a time you focus on God. That's what consecration is. Joshua then put the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant to lead the crossing 3/4 of a mile ahead of the people. Joshua then proclaimed God's promise and told the priests to step into the Jordan. You know what happened now? I hope the Jordan's going to part, because if you're Joshua, you're scared to death. And here's the reason. Victory is never attained without the possibility of failure. Wow. You want to know why many of us don't move forward? Because we're afraid to fail. We're scared. We're scared to take that other position at work. We're scared to do these different things that God's going, come on, let's go. I'm already ahead of you. I'm leading the way for your business. I'm leading the way for your relationships. I'm leading the way for your marriage. Just do the things I've asked you to do. Come on, let's go. And we go, nope, if I don't have control, I'm too scared and I'm afraid I might fail. So it's better if I just stay right here than risk failing. So I've been an athlete all my life, and I grew up in Minnesota. And so I was ADD before ADD was cool. They had no medication. All there was to deal with my ADD was my dad hit me a lot, and I got to go out and play. Those were the two ways you dealt with ADD in the 70s and 80s. But guess what? It helped me to discipline myself. I didn't need drugs to control myself. What I needed to do was channel all that energy into something positive. So what I did is I went into athletics, and I focused all of my mind and that crazy energy into something positive. And the interesting thing about athletics is this. I love to win. And we were just playing softball up at the men's retreat. And so winning is the point of playing. So in my day, there wasn't purple participant ribbons for everybody. You didn't get a trophy for participating. We'd take that trophy and kick it down the street. And here's the thing. You want to know why that is? Because losing hurts worse than winning feels good. You want to know why? You want to know why we give participant ribbons and hand out trophies to all the kids to make sure we don't want them to feel bad, because we know that losing feels worse than the joy of winning feels good. The guys that go to the Super Bowl, they win the Super Bowl, and it's like the pinnacle of their professional career as football players. But guess what? The guys that almost made it and lost in the Super Bowl, those guys, sometimes you never recover from losing. Because what drives athletics is not the joy of winning. What drives athletics is I don't want to lose. Because losing hurts worse than the joy of winning. It's the drive to go, I don't want to be the failure. And here's where that becomes crippling, is when we say, it hurts so bad to lose or to look bad that I'm just not going to go at all. I'm not going to go at all, because that's better. But then immediately when you do that, your life stagnates. Because God goes, come on, I'm going to go ahead of you. Do you trust me? And many of us go, nope, I don't trust you because it hurts to lose too much. But you know what? To Israel's credit, they said, we're not going to fail again. The whole generation before us failed, we're going in. And you're going to see some of the greatest high points of Israel's history over the next few weeks when they try to take Jericho. But the first step of victory is the possibility of failure. And I love Joshua. As the priests are carrying the Ark of the Covenant, so watch, Ark of the Covenant, gold box, remember? Gold box, the cherubim, the angels on top, God's Spirit dwelt on this gold box that the priests carried on poles. It was literally a traveling throne of God. The power of God went in this on top of this gold box. Imagine Joshua watching the priests walk towards the Jordan River that's overflowing at this point and going, please, 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 please. And imagine if the priest trudged into the water and nothing happened. And all the people go, what's up, Joshua? You thinking failure? You know what? I knew you were going to be a loser. I didn't even vote for you. I like Moses. You followed Moses, and you're a loser. Imagine now Joshua's going, what do you do with 2 million people stuck on the other side of the Jordan? Maybe God's not even real. Listen, victory always has a potential of failure. And you know what? That's exactly where faith is found. Faith is found before you get to failure, if God's ahead of you. You will never fail if God's leading you, but it's going to take a walk of faith to follow him. Touching the water, the priests, when they touched the water, it heaped up. And the Hebrew word there for heaped up means to pile up or mound. So imagine the water stops flowing, and the water north of it comes and crashes into this. I'd love to have been there. I don't know if an angel held it back, and it was like some clear thing of glass where you could look in an aquarium, you could see fish floating around in the Jordan River, or if it was a mudslide that plugged up the river, because it's actually happened before in the exact same place. So let me show you. This is like an overview of the Sea of Galilee. That's where Jesus walked on water. You see the Dead Sea down here. That's the Salt Sea, or the Sea of Arabah in the story today. Still there to this day. This is the lowest point on the face of the earth. Literally, if the mountains were not there, that separates the Mediterranean Sea from there, you're almost 1,000 feet underwater at the Dead Sea. And so Israel is camped on the east. They need to go to the west, where Jericho is, which we'll see in the next couple weeks. The Jordan is at flood stage, and many of the men could make it across, but you got women, you got children, you got the elderly, you got cattle, you got animals that can't make it across. How are you going to get a whole nation of millions across there? You're not, unless God does a miracle. And you know it's exactly what he did. You see about halfway up is the city of Adam. It's in, if you were to Google Damiah, Jordan, that's the modern city that's near Adam, and that's 18 miles north of where Israel's crossing the Jordan here in the story. So here's the satellite shot of it. Here's the Google Maps of it. You see the Salt Sea at the bottom there, and about 18 miles up, you see there's a bridge. So if you Googled Damiah, Jordan, you'll see the bridge, Damiah Bridge, that goes over almost the exact same spot that in Scripture says the Jordan was stopped up. And actually in 1929, there was a huge mudslide that slid across Damiah right there, and it plugged up the Jordan for 20 hours. And it actually stopped flowing from that point going south. And so we don't know if God did a miracle by plugging it with mud. We don't know if God did a literal miracle of just heaping it up by a miraculous work of an angel or whatever. But that's where that happened. I want you to see this. Here's the other shot of it, a close-up version. Jericho's right there, which we will visit when we go to Israel. And you see the eastern side, though. See where they're doing all this agricultural today? That's a huge flat plain, a perfect place for millions of people to camp out. And that's exactly where they are in this story in Joshua 3. They are now, millions of people are not going to go single file through the Jordan. They are going to cross over in a massive horde on dry ground. God doesn't even let them go through mud. He actually dries the ground so they could walk over in one massive wave. That's why he stopped at 18 miles up, so they could just all walk across literally right towards Jericho, which is about 2 miles from the Jordan. So that's where it happened. The journey to victory begins with the first step of faith forward. Everybody watch. Here's your life. I'm going to show you your life in one capsule. Ready? Here's your life. This is you. That also might be you. This is you. God says, I'm going ahead of you. Are you coming with me? Here's your choice. This or this. It's not hard. It's not mysterious. It's this. Your first step of victory is your first step of faith forward. I move forward with you, God. And you know what your first step of faith is? Your first step of faith is submission to God. You're God, I'm not. I know my marriage is on the rocks. I'm already cheating on my wife. She doesn't know yet. But honestly, I know you want me to be in my marriage. I'm not really into my marriage. I know it's what I'm doing is not right, but honestly, at the end of the day, I'm happier this way. I know my husband is a total train wreck, but that guy just gives me a lot of attention. And I know it's probably wrong. I shouldn't be flirting around. I'm a married woman, but it's where I get my value from, honestly. It's like we know what's right, but we stagnate when God tells us what's already true. Don't do that. Work on your marriage. I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. I want you to stay in it. There's going to be a glorious future for you. Be strong. Be courageous. I know he's tough. I know she's tough. But God can do amazing things. And the very first step is this. I'm willing. I don't know how it's going to work out, but I'm willing to follow you, God. The first step of faith of victories is the first step of submission to God, saying, I'm willing to see what you want from my life. And that's exactly what the priests do. That's exactly what Israel does. They step forward, and God did a miracle because God was going ahead of them. Number one, God goes before his people. Number two, God goes behind his people. So not only does God go ahead to plow the way, but God goes behind. You know what's interesting is right at about this time in Minnesota, when I was in high school, we would have some ferocious winters. We would have winters where overnight we'd get 2-3 feet of new snow in the spring right now. So me as ADD kid, I don't want to be inside, so I'm outside when it's like freezing, people are dying, and I'm outside screwing around because I can't stay inside anymore. But you know what's interesting about Minnesota is they hardly ever cancel school. So I remember waking up some mornings and the snow would be piled halfway up our window. So you couldn't even snowshoe or cross country to school. It was so much snow. And I would think, oh gosh, good. Snow day. We're gonna go screw around in the snow. You know what, Minnesota? Nope, suck it up, son. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna send the state snow plows to make a way for you to get to school. No. Yep. You know, in California, it's totally different, right? If God spits on the ground, everybody's like, Dento! You know, a little bit of mist, and everybody forgets how to drive in Southern California, right? All of a sudden, the freeways go from 80 miles an hour to like, I think there's some wet stuff there. What about the children? Slow down. You know, Minnesota, man, you're driving on ice, 80 miles an hour, and nobody gets into an accident because everybody knows what's going on. And the thing is with Minnesota is that, hey, is there snow? No problem. You know what we're going to do? We're going to get the snow plow out. And the state snow plows come, and they're monsters. They're four-wheel drive, wheels almost the height of this ceiling with chains on it. And they got plows on the front that are like 6-8 feet high. And they go and they blow this snow off the road. So if you decided, you know what, I'm not going to drive home today. I'm going to park on the side of the road. Or your car broke down or something. Those snow plows don't care. Man, they'll blow your car into the field, throwing that snow 30 feet in the air. And you know what? The bus comes and picks you up and follows that snowplow all the way to school. So while Californians are going, I think there's water, you know, it's blowing 6 feet of snow off there so you can go to school. Now, as a student, as a high school student, I'm like, oh, dude, come on, guys, give me a break. But the issue was, you can't get to school on your own. But if you follow this snowplow going ahead of you, you'll get to where you need to go safely. You won't crash, you'll be safe. It's the same thing with God. God not only goes ahead of you, God now will go behind you. What you think is impossible, I can't recover my marriage. I can't do good at my job. I can't raise my kids. What you consider impossible, God will make a way if you'll follow him. And God will also now go behind you. And there will be many times that we were traveling in a bus and there'd be a highway patrol that would make sure we didn't slide off the road or anything like that. Like we were boxed in, and guess what? We always got to school safe, unfortunately. God goes behind his people. Being Moses' former assistant, people weren't sure if Joshua would be of the same quality as Moses. However, God promised to raise him up and back him up as he led God's people. When God has your back, you can always move forward. Woo! Listen, if God has called you to move forward, he'll get your back too. He'll get your back. I know, ladies, it's going to be hard with a husband that's tough. I know, guys, you have a difficult wife. I know it's hard. You got kids, you want to punch in the face every day. I know it's hard. Don't do that. Even if you want to, don't. What I'm saying is life is hard. What I'm saying is it's not impossible to please God in difficult times. Because God will go before you in things he's called you to do. Be a good husband, be a good wife, be a good employer, be a good employee. He's called you to do those things already. So go forward, believing that God's going to do good things, and God will get your back when you do those good things. And he did that for Joshua. Imagine following Moses, who's part of the Red Sea. Now God's going, I'm going to do the same thing with you, Joshua, except we're going to do the Jordan River. And Joshua's like, are you serious? For real? Yep. Imagine as the priests get close to the water, he's going, come on, come on, come on. Please work. If this doesn't work, man, I'm jacked. And they touch the water, and a miracle happens. And the guy that took over for Moses, one of the greatest leaders in history, now becomes a great leader because God got his back. He followed God in faith, and God got his back. He backed up his choices. You know what's funny about our culture is that we're super negative. We're hypercritical, super negative. Just get on Twitter sometime, you'll be depressed for days. Everything's sarcastic, everything's tear down, everything's just like, even if it's great, people got to find a way to tear it down. I can imagine the gossip that was going around about Joshua around the campfires. Oh, dude, this guy, he can't do nothing. Man, Moses, man, he was the man. Joshua, dude, you don't even know what you're doing. It's like, remember that supervisor you had at work? The one that they put over you, and he came from a different company. You're like, I've been here 20 years. You don't even know where the toilet paper is stored. And you know what's weird about our culture? Is that we feel better about tearing people down than encouraging people to be better. It's weird. We immediately default to negative because we're prideful. Sometimes we don't want people to succeed because we want their position. Or jealousy, we're like, I want to tear them down. I can't wait to see you train wreck because I want to see the carnage. Rather than saying, gosh, you're my supervisor. You know what I would love? I want you to succeed because where you go, I go. I mean, where the company goes, I'll end up. So it would make sense for me to support you to be a better leader. But instead, we always bring the negative to the table. Like, for instance, Larry, who was the pastor here before me, he was alive when Jesus was here on earth. And so when I got here, he was friends with Jesus before Jesus went back to heaven, right? So he's been here forever. And so when I got here 5 years ago, I'm sure some of the people or whatever were just like, oh, who's this new guy? I'm sure this is going to be a train wreck. He can't even spell Temecula. He doesn't know what's going on at this church. I've been here for forever. He's not going to be better than Larry. Larry's the man. And so immediately, I love gossip. Gossip's the best thing ever. Because gossip either is positive or negative. It's the back talk. It's a talk behind your back. But if the back talk is positive, gosh, you know what? I'm really looking forward to seeing what God's going to do. This is going to be amazing. I can't wait to jump behind what's going to happen, and we're going to see God do amazing things. When that's the gossip, that's the best thing ever. But usually gossip is, this is going to be a train wreck. Watch it happen. I can't wait for this thing to mess up. This guy's not even going to last 6 months. He doesn't eat out like we do in Temecula. He doesn't even know what's going on. He's going to fix his kitchen and thinks he's going to eat in there or something. And I love that because God got Joshua's back. Moses was the man, but guess what? Once Moses died, God raised Joshua up. If God calls you forward, he'll get your back too. High-level leadership is influence. Bottom-level leadership is authority. Hey, let me give you some help. You can take this literally right into your job. Are you a supervisor? Are you a principal? Are you a company guy, company woman? You can take this literally right. This is one of the greatest principles of leadership, and you're going to learn it right here at church. Leadership is not authority. Leadership is influence. Authority says, you're going to do that, or I'm going to fire you right now. That's authority. And sometimes that needs to happen if people won't come into alignment. But understand this, influence and authority are two different things. Leadership is influence. Leadership wins the heart. Authority just demands action. When you get people, you won their heart to what you're doing, all of a sudden everybody starts rowing the same way, and it's amazing energy. When you have to make people do stuff because you threaten them, you don't do that, I'm going to punch you square in the face. People might do, because they're scared of you, what you're asking them to do, but ultimately, you will not move forward as a company, you will not move forward in your division, you will not move forward as a church, you won't move forward as a family if your leadership's based on fear. Authority and influence are two different things. What you want to be as a leader, young people, as you grow up, is you want to be an influencer. You want to win people's hearts, not just their actions. When you win people's hearts, you get actions thrown in. And I love that about Joshua. God got his back, and he won the people's hearts. And the people now file in behind Joshua, and they're going to take the land because he won their heart as a leader, rather than just saying, I'm the man now, everybody listen to me. He said, I'm your leader, follow me. And God got his back. When believers move into God's future, they never regret their past. You know what's interesting is I've followed God for a few years, and there's never been one time that I've followed God that I've regretted it. Never one time has God said, I want you to do this, and I come was scared, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll do this. I've never looked back and gone, why'd you do that, Jesus? I super regret that. That was the worst time of my life. But you know things I have regretted is when I've made my own choices. And I've train wrecked some other things in my life. Why did I do that? Why didn't I listen to God's wisdom? Why didn't I do things God's way? You know what we call that in our culture? We call it me time. I need some me time. I'm going to make this call in my own life. I need a little me time. What does that even mean? You live your whole life is me time. What are you talking about? Is this day more special? This is more me time than yesterday? No, you live your whole life for yourself. What are you even talking about? You know what becomes beautiful in your life is when you follow God, even when it's a little scary, even when you might lose, when you risk, and God comes through, and man, you mature. You go, wow, I see how good God is. Now I see what I could be. Now I see where life can be awesome. I don't force things. I just follow God as he moves forward. You will never regret following God, friends. You'll never regret it. You might regret things that you make a call on in your life. You'll never regret following God. Number 3, and lastly, number 1, God goes before his people. He will plow the way to make his will happen in your life, and you will feel blessed by it. He will go behind you. He'll get your back when you follow him. And lastly, God goes through his people. As a people, Israel had been at their lowest point of existence, wandering around in the desert aimlessly with no purpose other than to let a faithless generation die. It was so bad, most of the nation wanted to return to slavery rather than continue in the desert. Now, at the Jordan River, just above the Dead Sea, they are literally at the lowest point on the face of the earth physically. Yet, despite being at their lowest point spiritually and physically, God was still with them. And I leave you with this. Listen to me. Listen to me. You might be in the darkest, deepest, depressive time of your life. God is there with you. Listen, there's no hole so deep that God is not there with you. You may have dug your own hole of regret, and God is still there with you. I want to encourage you when you leave here today that God goes through you no matter where you are. You might be in a pit so deep today in addiction. You're like, I can't get rid of my porn problem. I can't get rid of this meth problem. I can't get rid of this pharmaceutical drug problem. I can't stop eating. I can't stop spending money. I'm addicted to online gambling, and I'm just burying my family in debt, and they don't even know it yet. We're already dead. My wife doesn't even know it. We're literally a walking financial dead family. They're like, I can't let go. I want to encourage you with something this morning. Number 1, you need to stop. If you need help, get help. We have help here at the church. Don't wallow in secrecy, and sin thrives in secrecy. But exposed to light, it'll hurt a little bit, but man, that's where health is found. Get help. There's help here for you, number 1. And number 2, God is there with you in the dark. There is no place that you can be in so much darkness that God will not shine a light. There is no pit of despair so deep that God won't throw a ladder down to you or a basket down, and all you got to do is get in the basket. All you got to do is start climbing the ladder 1 foot in front of the other, and you'll be amazed how the hole and pit of despair you never thought you'd get out of, all of a sudden there's glory and freedom. God moves through his people, and you know what? Even if you're starting at the bottom, God is there with you. Don't ever think God has abandoned me. My life's over. It's never over. God is there with you every step of the way, through your marriage, through your parenting, through your job, through your health issues. God loves you. He will never stop loving you. He will never abandon you. There is no darkness or depth where God doesn't dwell. Isn't that awesome? There is no darkness or depth where God doesn't dwell. God is there with you in the dark. God is there with you in the pit of despair. God loves you. Don't give up. Listen, all you got to do is this. Your first step of faith forward is submission to God. God, I'm screwed up. I need your help. Help me to get help. Help me to be the man or woman you've called me to be. Because guess what? God has a great future for you. But we have to move forward into that future.